Hello, Dave Miller here, President of eMAM. I have with me Chuck Bulow. He's our VP Business Development. And thanks for joining us today. We will record today's session. Let us know if you want a copy of the recording or if you want a copy of the slide deck we're going over. Our technology director once likened our system to a Swiss Army knife. There's lots of little attachments and options built inside. So we're very excited to share with you some of those things built into it. And to make sure you don't cut yourself, our team is ready on standby, and we have partners as well worldwide to help our customers set up workflow automation and configuration and everything else. So we're going to give you an overview. Presenting today is our VP Business Development, Chuck Bulow. And let me turn over to Chuck. We'll have questions and answers at the end. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks, Dave. So yeah, today, what we're going to talk about is doing workflows and automating different daily tasks and so on within the eMAM system. We're going to give you a couple of case studies or cases on, ideas on how to use the workflow engine that's built into eMAM. It is built in and it comes with your eMAM system. And typically you're not having to go in and be a programmer to do this. And you can build out your workflows, kind of whiteboard them out a little bit, and then design that within the workflow tools that we have within eMAM. So kind of today what we're going to talk about is, what is the workflow automation, how it's used, and so on. What are the triggers and different events and conditions and actions? So there's a step in which we'll go through, which is, events first, some kind of trigger. So something happens like ingest or somebody changes metadata. And then based on that workflow, if a condition is met, so you can filter out different things and provide metadata or so on to kind of trigger different conditions and so on. And then what actions you would like to take. And the nice thing about the actions part is one trigger could trigger also multiple actions based on conditions if they're met. Multiple actions in the list and in order as well. So we'll go over that today. So we'll give you real world use cases and then of course the benefits, of why to use the workflow engine. So in the workflow engine, again, this is automated actions based on triggers. So you're defining what that trigger might be. And again, that is an event. Now, we'll talk about here in a second what exactly those are, but those can be a one-time configuration in this workflow that we design. It can run automatically 24/7, so you can disable it as well or enable it at any time. Multiple workflows in parallel as well. So, if one workflow is going and then somebody else does another trigger of the same workflow, again, it could be running in parallel. So multiple workflows running at the same time as well. And one event is per workflow. So that's what's key is, whatever that event, like we'll talk about them, but, like ingest or metadata change or scheduled dates are reached and so on. So multiple actions per workflow. Again, that's what I mentioned. So like with dates that are met, I could send out media with metadata and then notify somebody that it's been sent out, for example. So that's multiple actions based on one event trigger. Activate and deactivate a course on demand that you have. And by the way, this is all done in what we call our super admin. This is typically done by a more senior person that's behind the scenes setting up the different workflows and so on. And when we talk about it, this is the area in which they're going to go and then do all these workflows. So the screenshots you're going to see are all based on the super admin console, going to the workflow. And then again, here's triggers and so on. So we'll go back and forth between this. But for the most part, that's exactly where things are done in that super admin. Okay, so what are the events and what are the triggers, these events that trigger these workflows? So of course, ingest, so media is brought in and the ingest is complete and maybe the profile that was used is XYZ, that we'll talk about that in the conditions and so on. But Custom metadata was changed. So a custom metadata field went from no to yes, and then it triggered the workflow. Asset information changed. So the asset title was changed, or the author was changed, or any kind of descriptive changes. That also could trigger then a workflow there as well. So button metadata click, we do have buttons, which is really cool. So in your metadata widget, you can click a button, it'll trigger a workflow. Anybody who uploads or downloads or completes or airs or purges of cloud uploads and so on, that also could trigger then the workflow as well. And then lastly, the scheduler is like a date and time for the server. So based on the eMAM system and a scheduled date and time are reached, that would trigger then that workflow as well. So again, as I mentioned, you go to the super admin. This is where you would select first the event. So these are the options, as we just went over. You go ahead and select those options. So maybe like ingest would be the first. We'll go through the case studies, but that'll give you an idea. Now, all of that event happening, you can then set up one or multiple conditions. So like it's ingest, it's a video, and the ingest process was complete, and it was used based on this ingest profile. So again, those conditions have to be met before you can move on then to the actions. So again, the fields, file names, asset types, ingest status, custom metadata fields, cloud status, tags, and so on. The operator could be like equals or contains or greater than or less than. So again, on the operator, you could also do date ranges and so on. So you could say anything that was sent out for or ingested this week. So I could actually say, you know, all the items that were ingested this week, I could send out a notification or so on. And then of course the values could be completed, air, you know, video, audio, images, you know, upload complete, conditions were all met, and so on. In this case here, then moves on to the actions that are going to happen. So again, with this, in this case here, like in this example, it's ingest was the event that triggered it. So a file was ingested. And then the date equals, and then the ingest status, we could put in a date in there, you know, and have a date set up and so on. And then it equals then that date or creation date. Now this will play out as we go through some of the different case options or case examples and so on that we have here. But again, you can choose any one of those you know, fields and so on, ingest status, ingest profile, ingest description, asset types, and so on, and then have an operator based on that condition. So again, event type happened, and then these are the conditions that have to be met before we go on to the action. Okay, now the actions, this is what will happen based on that trigger, and then the conditions are met. You can send out media for delivery. You can send media over to archive. You can change or update metadata in that asset. I can then send out notifications. Now the notifications, you can do email, and then if you do have programming capabilities, you have RESTful commands and scripts and so on that you can actually schedule or send out or trigger those kind of items and so on, events, or not events, but the scripts and so on, and trigger those if you'd like. That does require a little bit of programming and so on, but the email does not. So if you want to send an email that somebody, that a file has been ingested and successfully, and they need to review it. We could trigger AI indexing. We do have our eMAM Next system for AI triggering and running for transcripts, speech to text, facial recognition, branding, you know, annotations, and so on in there. You can also then, and this is used quite often, people will actually ingest media first to get the asset into the system, like instant asset, and then editors are able to access that media immediately. But after it's been ingested and the ingest process has been completed, you can then trigger a workflow that says create a proxy for that video or audio or whatever it might be. So we'll get into a little bit of that here in a minute. So it's one of the case studies or case examples shows that. I could move an asset or add an asset to another category, and then of course also add the assets to a project automatically or manage a project. So again, ingest or the trigger, you got the conditions, and now you got the actions here as well. So this is kind of an idea of what you would have, as an example of what would be available to you on that action. So the event type triggered it, the conditions were met, and now the action. So I could deliver media, archive the media, change metadata, notify, which was that email and sending out scripts or triggering scripts. I could purge media if I wanted to from various levels of purge there as well. So you have that. Manage categories, meaning I could add or move an asset from one category to a next, another. Manage a project. I can AI index, create a proxy later. And this is brand new for us this past year, where we can actually change the color code of the asset in the thumbnail. Some people will use those, showing that maybe a scheduled date has been reached on rights management, and you want to put a red or a purple or something of a different color there to designate when people are searching through assets, they can see the thumbnail and see that color and say that, oh, rights has been given up or is about to expire on that asset there as well. This is an example. Okay, so our first use case here, auto delivery on ingest. So the idea would be in this case that once an asset has been brought in and the ingest status of that, of course, the system dashboard then gives you an example of where the status is of the ingest. And once that's been completed, that then is the condition. There's another condition we've added to this example, which is it is a video. And then lastly, the action is deliver that asset to a predefined location. So we can set up then predefined delivery profiles upon ingest and then have it delivered to that specified location. So the way you would set that up is, give it a name. So production delivery. It was ingested. You would set the conditions as ingest status equals and then completed. So that's an option there. And so, once that asset is now added to the eMAM system properly, then you can go in and say, well, it was a video as well. So you would select asset type from your pull down menu there and then hit equals and then video. And then lastly, for the action, you would have then an option for the delivery, which we saw as one of the options. And then I would select one of the profiles I have. And in this case here, I have Comcast. So again, once the asset's ingested, it's completed, it's a video, it will then be delivered. So that's just one simple, very simple workflow that you could set up there as well. Okay, use case number 2. Now, AI has been pretty big over the last several years, where we're actually doing speech to text, facial recognition, annotation, summary, like eMAM Next does translation, transcripts based on speech to text on different languages, gives a summary and then a file naming generation as well, and then tags as well. So what this would be is that the media is ingested, the ingest has been completed, and it is a video. And then what I want to do is trigger, in this case here, we're going off to cloud, which is the Microsoft Video Indexer AI service. And I'm going to have them process the media to give me a transcript. And so in this case here, it's going to go in and do both insights and transcript. So it'll give us facial recognition and so on. Now, how that's done, that means now that my workflow, any video that comes in based on this condition, it's going to trigger then to go off and get processed by Azure. So again, we give it a name, send to Video Indexer. Quite simple. And then it's ingest, and then the conditions, once again, are a video, and the ingest status is complete. And then down below, the action would be adding a AI index. And in this case here, this is giving you a video indexer and some code and so on. So these are the informations that we receive through an API integration we have with Video Indexer. And that will trigger that API call then to go in and say, hey, here's the proxy. I want you to transcribe it and then do facial recognition. So again, any video that comes in, comes into the eMAM system, this could be a way in which you automatically every video comes in to do that. We also have a button to push so you can do singular video by manual process there as well to do the same setup here, same workflow. Okay. All right, third case, we're going to do that proxy after the media has been ingested. Okay, so the idea is that the news team wants an instant access to any media that's coming in. They don't want to have to wait for eMAM to create and the transcoder to create a proxy and then become available. They want the media to become instantly available within, say, a Premiere, and they'll import it into Premiere, their edit tools and so on, and then they'll make their cuts and so on. So the idea is that the media is ingested. Now, in this case here, in this use case, we actually are using an ingest profile. So in ingest profile, you can have multiple profiles that describe exactly what happens. And one of our options for the profile is instant asset or instant ingest. And that means that the media is going to come in. It's just going to be copied into the storage location for eMAM to monitor. And it'll become instantly available inside the eMAM system. And then editors can go ahead and grab that media and start editing it. Now, the other condition we're adding to this workflow, workflow is ingest status is complete. So we've done that before. And that means that the file has finally been available and now in the storage. Now, the transcoder didn't pick up the media to create the proxy yet. So again, that gives you instant access that there is an asset. You won't have a preview yet of the proxy inside of eMAM, but the editors in, say, Adobe Premiere would be able to have access to that media and then see it and import it and then start editing it within Premiere. And of course, they would have preview and so on there. Now, after this has been completed, the conditions are met. The action then is go ahead and create a proxy. But again, that media is still available. The proxy is now being created by the transcoder, and then we send obviously a trigger over to the transcoder to go ahead and create the proxy, and then of course add it to this media. So within eMAM, after the proxy is created, you'll have a preview. So this is a great way if you need instant access for your editors of media that's coming into eMAM. This is a great workflow to use. So again, we go in, add a name. Ingest is one of the selections, and an ingest profile. In this case here, what we're doing is saying that if it's instant ingest is selected and then it's completed, the proxy will be created. And so that workflow then in the storage profile and in the ingest profile, we'll go ahead and start creating that proxy in the background there as well. Okay, now this one's a little bit more complicated. Okay, so this use case is kind of a change schedule workflow where automated assets are purged. So this is an idea where media comes in, raw media comes in, it's been ingested and then purged after a grace period. So after a certain amount of time, it's gone, but it gives it time for the editors to go ahead and edit that content before it gets purged, and then obviously create their own new assets and put it back into the eMAM system as a sequence with a new asset. So the first workflow, so there's 1, 2 workflows here, and then there's a fourth one there at the last here. But under the workflow, obviously there's an ingest trigger. So the media has come in. The condition is that the ingest is completed. The condition is that is now exists in the online storage, which that's the name of our online storage here in this case. The ingest profile was raw. So the user, when they uploaded the media, they used the ingest profile called raw. And so that's raw content coming in. and that would be processed a little bit different. And then the action in this first workflow is we're going to put a date on it, and we're going to do today's date plus 60 days. Okay, so what that means is that scheduled date, the next workflow is going to use that date to then trigger that workflow. Okay, so now we have a scheduled date on this asset that came in, or the assets that came in that's raw. Now the next workflow, it's going to monitor that scheduled date. Okay, so once that scheduled date, and by the way, the dates are based on your server. So obviously you want to, maintain your server date and time and so on. The scheduled date is reached. Okay, that triggers the second workflow. And then the condition is that it's still in the storage. We're going to move it from one category to raw backup, set another metadata field and change the metadata field to purge full. That means that every bit of that asset. So that means if there were, proxy or, mezzanine copy or backup copy or something of that, that would be purged. That's going to be an action. And then we're going to set the raw backup date for 30 days. That means that the production storage is actually going to be deleted within 30 days. Okay, so now you go into the next level, and then when that raw backup date, which is the very bottom of workflow 2, in this last workflow, the scheduled date is now that same one 30 days later. So 30 days later from now, that backup raw backup date is reached. The file has to be still exist in the storage online, eMAM online, and then the workflow here is going to actually purge everything associated with that asset. So source locations, it was stored there in eMAM, cloud or archive, and also the proxy as well. Okay, so again, fully automated 90-day purge cycle, 60-day grace period, 30-day backup window, and then a full purge after that of that raw content. So, all right. So again, this is a little bit more complicated. So the first one in the upper left, scheduled backup date, the ingest is there. Ingest is complete. It's in the storage of online, and the ingest profile was raw. That means now that we're going to set that scheduled backup date as 60 days from today's date. So whatever today's date is when this asset was ingested, we will then go ahead and add 60 days to that date. And then that date now will be stored in the metadata field for that scheduled backup date. Now, the next one is scheduled purge date. So in this case here, the scheduled date, which is, and again, hopefully you're following along here, scheduled backup date is reached. Okay, so exists in storage. Again, if it's still there, the scheduler date has been reached for the scheduled backup date. And then the condition, obviously, it's still in storage. And then what we're going to do is we're going to move that asset assignment from the category it's in and move that to raw backup. And then we're going to select change the metadata field to purge full. So when that next date is reached, which is raw backup, we're going to add 30 days. So from 30 days at that point of that scheduled date, it's going to now be fully purged. And in the bottom one, this is the other date. So this would be the raw backup, making sure that it still exists in the storage. This is going to be a full purge of all that raw media. So the editors hopefully had a chance to edit that video. And basically at that point, the asset's been purged. So that was a little more complicated, so on. So just to kind of let you know. Now this one is triggering like a REST command notification and so on. So triggering different URLs. So these are different things where scripts are running and so on. So when assets are ingested and it's complete, a script will run authorized tokens. These get into a little bit more detail on information that needs to be in the token and content type and so on. The body, so the asset ID, the title, name, that's all metadata information that's stored inside of the eMAM system. So we're passing this basically onto an external URL or system that's going to then use that information to process whatever it's scheduled to do or asked to do. And in this case here, this is like a traffic system. So for broadcasters, this is triggering basically messages over to, say, traffic system that, hey, we've got a new asset. So in this case here, we give it a name, production system notification, and then event type is ingest. Ingest status equals complete. So we made sure that the asset has been added to the eMAM system. And then what we're going to do, once it's been ingested completely and it's available in eMAM, we're going to send over to the traffic system the file name and the asset ID. Now, this information can be used inside of the traffic system, and then when they call back to us on an API call to maybe grab that media or this media that's been ingested, they will use that asset ID and the file name to trigger our API then to grab the file and then have it delivered, for example, a workflow for delivery to the playout system. So again, this gets a little bit more complicated. This is scripting and various things and traffic systems and rights management systems, task management systems, and so on. That's all based on, that's all available there as well. All right. So key benefits here, again, once you set that up and so on, zero manual efforts. Users, once they go through the workflows and all the different, life cycle of the media and so on, when they're done with it, they want to archive it or things like that, you can have those workflows running automatically for them. They won't even know it. They could look at the dashboard and various things to see what's going on, but that's also, a way to look at it as well. We also have a dashboard, by the way, for the all workflows. So admins can look and see if there's an issue with the workflows. They could look at the dashboard and then see what steps were taken and then where it may have failed or if everything had passed through. One-time setup. So once it's in the system, you're available and ready to go. Again, fully customizable, as you can see from the list and the menus. And then, with that scripting option as well, it just, it opens up into so many different things as well. AI ready. So again, with different AI systems, we can trigger actions to get run the video through and audio through AI and images. Smart notifications, as I mentioned, for URL. And then RESTful API commands and so on. And then, end-to-end coverage. So, we ingest, delivery, archive, metadata, cloud, so on. Based on these workflows, we can do kind of an end-to-end solution when it comes to MAM and PAM type workflows and so on. Okay. So speaking of PAM, there's a last workflow here we can talk about today. And there's many other things too. So if you do have questions on that, we can kind of go through things. But on the Premiere side, so this is production management where media is centralized into the eMAM system, and then the media is then available at that point through the panel to be able to find that content and then be able to import it into projects and so on. So the way this works is you can first off centralize the media inside of eMAM, or you can start with Premiere with the media that's not in eMAM as yet. And then once you're done with the edit session and want to create the sequence as a new asset, you can upload all of that media through Adobe Premiere and through the panel into the eMAM system. So either way, you can start in Premiere, you can start in eMAM. But most what they'll do is they'll centralize the media so they know they have it. And of course, they can go in and have workflows to archive that media. Adding the panel to the local workstation. So if I want to work on my local workstation, I would have to have access to the media, and then of course also add that panel to see the media and search for it as well. You can create projects inside of eMAM that go into Premiere, or you can create Premiere projects and then import those back, or export back to the eMAM system. So import media, you can do proxy or original. Export back into eMAM is when you're done with the media. And this includes like when you're working with productions or you're working with After Effects, Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, DaVinci Resolve as well. And then Avid is more of upload into the eMAM system with sequences. So but we're going to talk about Adobe Premiere here. And then manage projects and check in, check out. So kind of the way that works is, let's tab over to the eMAM system. So in most cases, what people will do is they'll centralize then all of their media. So if I go in and search for workflow category, there we go. And so then I can go in and then look for any projects or any media that's associated then with that, with those assets and so on. So I could see these looking here. And so within the browse widget, there's the categories, and then that's the media that's associated in those categories. So typically what people will do is they'll build out their workflows where they upload the media with folders, and then we create these categories for assignment. So this is kind of your visual when you're looking at that and so on. Now, with the eMAM system, as I mentioned, you can start with a project here. So I can start with a project, and I'll just do here. There we go. So I can start with a project here. I can add it to a category. So we'll go in and let's see, workflow down here. There it is. And we'll put it in the projects category. And we'll select the metadata. You can have metadata for your projects and so on. What storage you're storing the projects on. And then, of course, active and so on. So what I can do is I can go in and create also bins in here and sequences in here. And then once I go in and create that sequence, so I can go www sequence 001, and we'll add that, and so on. And then, of course, I can browse and then grab that media, drop it onto a timeline, for example. So this is more of a rough cut timeline within the eMAM system. So concept here is project was created, rough cut sequences were created, and then, of course, I can save that. This is now part of that project I've just created, and it is now an eMAM project. Okay. Now, I also have Adobe Premiere in there. So within Adobe Premiere, and let me switch over to Adobe Premiere. There it is. Come on. Let's close that out. That's what's causing that. So this is the panel that I'm looking into the eMAM system. So if I refresh this, you'll see that there is that WW project 001. Okay, now the way I get this onto my system is I go into the eMAM system under my login, and I go over to my email address here. And then with that, then I can go to the apps, and I can download then the app manager here for Mac or Windows. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the install process. It's very quick and easy, but you go in and add that app manager, localize it, and download it for the Mac or the Windows, and then you'll process and set up the panel on this local workstation. And that's what's really key. That has to happen before you go in and look for that, panel. And what will happen then is, with that, let's go over to Premiere. Is the panel will show up, and then you can go in and then set up all your presets here with, if you're going to localize media, you would have predefined locations for that. And then we also have various settings here for the panel and how it's going to work with eMAM, like export bin structure. If I had a bin structure here, it would come in as a category. As a default, I'm going to always link, because I'm local here, I can link with the media and localize the media or stream the media from the cloud. So various things in here with these settings, I can go in and then add those to my panel. And now I'm up and running. So this is actually part of Windows extensions and so on. And there's eMAM right there. So I've added that to my local workstation. So in this case here, what I can do then is I can export or import, I'm sorry, those projects here. And with that project, I've got different formats and so on. So now I have that same sequence that was inside of eMAM. Now, what you'll also notice is, and let's try this one here. You'll also notice what comes over is markers, and also if I had subclips here, that I would also bring those over as well. And so they would come over individually. So if I went over to eMAM and then went to assets with, and then search for assets and imported those subclips would come running over as well and be part of my Premiere project. The nice thing is these markers that I add in here also travel back into the eMAM system there as well. So I can go back into eMAM. I can use any of my search tools to go in and find all the different content. I could use any one of the search filters that I predefined and look at the media prior to bringing it in. I could also go in and we keep track of different versions. Those come in there as well. There's metadata, there's history, there's comments, and I can even trigger a review and approve right from here with the asset, maybe a sequence I just uploaded. I could open that up and then actually trigger an approval where somebody gets an email and link and go ahead and accept or reject on that as well. Now, one thing that happens, and this does happen quite often, so let me clear this, is that some people what they'll do is they'll import graphics from their local machine that are already in the eMAM system. So this has kind of happened a lot within this workflow here. So this eMAM logo is already inside of the eMAM system, but in some cases, some people, what they'll do is they'll go in and import graphics and so on in here. And let me just load up. Sorry, I got to find that real quick. Is that same asset that's already in the eMAM system. And if I import that and then I use it, let's say, and kind of drop it in on the timeline here. Let me shrink this down a little bit. Oops, that's not where I want. There we go. Now I'll take all this and move it over. So what I have is this graphic here, and of course I can shrink it down and so on. I want to kind of bore you with all the different things that I have here. There we go. Shrink it down. There we go. It's already in the eMAM system. So part of this workflow, you're going to want to then use what we call the link media option here. And so this system, this panel will detect and say, hey, you've already got that asset inside of the eMAM system. Do you want to link with it with the eMAM, the asset that's already in the eMAM system, versus if I were to export it without linking, it would actually duplicate the media. So we can link that there as well. I can close that up. And then all the edits that I'm doing, After Effects, adding, and all that kind of good stuff, I can then export all of these projects back into the eMAM system and then make a note. Let's see, graphics. And then we'll click on that. Again, this will detect that that asset is already in the eMAM system. This will allow me also to create from my settings from the sequence here. I can go in and create a sequence as a new asset in the eMAM system. I could use on that new asset transcoding locally or a server-based transcoder to create the proxies. I can add it to the categories, which it's already added. And then I can add user tags and then any metadata associated with those assets that are coming in as new to the eMAM system. And what I've done is I've actually now converted that project from an eMAM, which we started in, and now is a now a Premier project inside of eMAM. And of course, if I created a sequence, it's right here. And then we'll keep track of the versions. So each time that somebody adds this and checks it out and then makes changes and puts it back in, we will keep track of the versions and the versions of the sequences as well. So quite nice on the workflow there. All right, I think that's enough. So jump back, Dave, and
thanks a lot, Chuck. Yeah, let's dive into questions. There's a lot of information. Let's put your questions in the chat. So one of them, one of them is costing. And so except for the SaaS system, most people with a licensed system are doing, there's no cost for it. So obviously our team, I mean, we have a lot of customers doing all kinds of crazy configurations and with APIs and with the configurations. So certainly it's one of the powers of the system. Second question, AI tools. So we have our on-prem AI Next running off a workstation is an option. I think Chuck showed Video Indexer. There's Amazon Recognition, Translate, 12 Labs, DeepGram, others. We went a demo with Premiere, deep into that. So across the Creative Cloud, similar tools for Blackmagic Design, and then Avid almost as much. They were limited at the API level, so we can't create an Avid bin, but we can certainly work with Avid editors in Media Composer. The instant asset, so there's option to do eMAM live, and so that instant asset is a great way to grab things as they're coming in, start to tag them and see that they're there, and then while the transcoding, so you don't have to wait for the transcode to finish processing and make a proxy for you to look at, but you can see that the media is there. And then obviously on our website, emamsolutions.com, there's a list of our partners, technology partners, our channel partners, in terms of integrated tools and in terms of folks who can help with your workflow. And I think that was a lot of the questions. Let's see if there's any other questions. We're happy to dive in deeply with other questions you had in a separate session. But thank you again for your interest today. We can share a copy of the deck today or the recording. Yeah, thanks for attending today. Thanks, Chuck, for presenting a lot of information, but give people something to think about. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day.